May 2025. I mean, just days ago, it really felt like the world was holding its breath.
It really did. You had India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers, just edging perilously close to, well, full-blown war.
It felt like something out of a, I don't know, a geopolitical thriller, but this was terrifyingly real.
Absolutely. And the speed of it all, the intensity of the escalation was deeply troubling.
So in this deep dive, we want to try and unpack that sequence of events, right? What brought us to the brink.
Exactly. And look at the underlying tensions that are always simmering there, and crucially understand this very fragile ceasefire we have now, the one that, for the moment at least, has pulled things back.
Okay. And we're drawing on sources from, what, May 11th, basically. News reports, Wikipedia, expert analysis.
That's right. News reports for the timeline. The Wikipedia entry gives a good structured overview and then some analysis from people who study this region closely.
And the idea isn't just to list facts, but to get a sense of the significance of each step in this dangerous dance they were doing.
Precisely. So where do we start? What actually kicked things off this
And
time?
what was that initial spark? The trigger.
It seems to point back to the terrorist attack on April 22nd. That happened near Pahalgam in Indian-administered Kashmir.
In the Bizaran Valley, wasn't it?
Yes, the Bizaran Valley. A truly horrific event.
And the victims. What do we know?
Tragically, somewhere between 26 and 28 civilians were killed. Reports say mostly Hindu tourists visiting the area.
Just awful. And was a local person killed too?
Yes, sadly, one local Muslim resident was also killed in the attack.
And who claimed responsibility?
Initially, the claim came from a group called the Resistance Front, or TRF.
TRF. And they're believed to be linked to Lashkar-e-Taiba.
That's the belief, yes. An offshoot with historical ties that often point back towards Pakistan, according to Indian sources.
And there were reports, weren't there, about how the attack was carried out? Something about targeting.
Yes, really disturbing eyewitness accounts suggested the attacker specifically targeted non-Muslims.
Which, you can imagine, just poured fuel on the fire. India's reaction must have been immediate.
Swift and strong, immediate condemnation, and right away, pointing the finger directly at Pakistan.
The accusation being state support for cross-border terrorism, citing those TRF links.
Exactly. Standard playbook, in a way, but the accusation was forceful, alleging Pakistan's hand in it.
And Pakistan's response. Predictable, perhaps?
A very strong denial, vehemently denying any involvement whatsoever.
And they called for an international investigation.
They did. They pushed for an independent international inquiry to look into what happened, which again is a common countermove.
This fundamental disagreement, it's always there, isn't it? About the facts on the ground.
It really is. It's a core part of the problem.
So after the attack, the accusations, then came India's military response. Operation Sindoor. Tell us about that.
Right. Operation Sindoor, launched on May 7th. This was a major step up.
How so? What did it involve?
It involved missile strikes. And crucially, these weren't just in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. They hit targets inside Pakistan proper, in Punjab province.
Really? Places like Bahawalpur and Muridke were mentioned, I think.
That's right. Those specific locations were named. Moving strikes beyond the disputed territory, that's a significant escalation.
A huge step. And what sort of hardware was involved? Did we get reports on that?
Reports mentioned quite sophisticated weaponry, Rafale fighter jets, for instance.
Equipped with Sako-P missiles.
Right.
And those hammer glide bombs.
Yes, escalation long-range missiles and ASM hammer precision bombs. India's position was that these were precision strikes.
Aimed at what? What was the official target?
India stated they were targeting terrorist infrastructure, specifically facilities linked to Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba.
Okay, so that was the military side. But India also brought in other measures, didn't they? Diplomatic, economic.
Yes, a whole package of measures alongside the military action. They ratcheted up the pressure significantly.
Like suspending the Indus Waters Treaty? That sounds major.
Hugely significant. That treaty governs how the waters of the Indus River system are shared. Suspending it is a massive deal, especially for Pakistan.
And closing the Attari-Wagah border crossing.
Yes, closed that major land border point, canceled visas for Pakistani nationals too.
Wow. And diplomats expelled.
Expelled Pakistani diplomats from India. Each of these actions sends a very strong signal with real-world consequences.
Let's just pause on the Indus Waters Treaty for a second. Why is suspending that so potentially inflammatory?
Well, it's a treaty that's held more or less for decades through multiple crises. It's fundamental for water management, particularly for Pakistan's agriculture.
So messing with that feels almost existential.
It could certainly be interpreted that way. It goes beyond typical diplomatic tit for tat. And closing the border crossing, that hits trade, yes, but also those vital, if limited, people-to-people links.
Okay, so that's India's multi-pronged response. How did Pakistan react to Operation Sindoor and these other measures?
Pakistan's condemnation was immediate and extremely strong. They labeled Operation Sindoor nothing less than an act of war.
And they made claims about the Indian strikes, too, about civilian casualties.
Yes, they alleged the Indian strikes had hit civilian areas and caused civilian deaths. They even claimed religious sites, mosques, had been targeted.
Which India presumably denied.
Which India would deny, yes. Again, conflicting narratives are central here.
And Pakistan didn't just condemn, they took their own actions, right? A retaliation.
Absolutely. They didn't just sit back. They announced they were suspending the Simla Agreement.
The Simla Agreement, that's another foundational document, isn't it?
Yeah.
About resolving disputes bilaterally.
Exactly. A cornerstone, particularly regarding how to handle the Kashmir issue. Suspending that is a major diplomatic move.
And mirroring India, they closed airspace. Borders.
Yes, closed their airspace to Indian flights, shut down border crossings from their side.
Expelled diplomats, suspended visas.
Yeah.
A whole package in reverse.
Pretty much a mirror image. Expelled Indian diplomats, suspended visas for Indians, and significantly halted all trade with India.
So a rapid downward spiral. Both sides taking really drastic steps.
It really shows how quickly things descended into a full-blown crisis footing.
What about military claims from Pakistan's side during this time? There were reports of jets being shot down.
Yes, Pakistan made claims that its Air Force had successfully shot down multiple Indian fighter jets during these engagements.
And India had counterclaims.
India countered, claiming they had downed a Pakistani JF-17 aircraft. So claims and counterclaims in the air as well.
And amidst all that, the really concerning reports from the ground in Kashmir. The shelling.
Yes, very worrying reports of heavy mortar and artillery fire from the Pakistani side into the Poonch sector of Indian-ministered Kashmir.
And that caused civilian deaths on the Indian side.
Tragically, yes. Reports indicated 15 civilians were killed in that shelling.
And then Pakistan announced its own operation name, Operation Bunyan al-Marsus.
That's right. Announced on May 10th, Operation Bunyan al-Marsus, which translates to something like solid structure or compact building.
And the aim of that operation?
It was reportedly aimed at targeting Indian military bases. The name itself seems intended to project strength, solidity, resolve.
So just to recap this incredibly fast escalation, can you walk us through the key dates again leading up to the ceasefire?
Sure. So things were already tense. More activity along the line of control, the LOSI, from late April into early May, say April 24th to May 5th.
Okay, simmering.
Simmering, exactly. Then the big jump on May 7th, India launches Operation Sindoor, the missile strikes.
Right.
Same day, May 7th, you have Pakistan claiming to down Indian jets, India claiming to down a Pakistani jet, and that deadly shelling in Poonch. All on the 7th.
A really intense 24 hours.
Extremely. Then May 8th, you get reports of Indian drone attacks, and Pakistan claims to have shot down quite a few. Some reports said up to 12 Indian drones.
So 12.
Yeah, significant numbers claimed. And then May 10th, Pakistan announces its Operation Bunyan al-Marsus.
Just before the ceasefire kicked in.
Literally just hours before the ceasefire was announced.
Okay, and the human cost. The casualties reported during this period, keeping in mind these are claims from each side.
Right, absolutely have to preface it with that. These figures are often part of the information war. India claimed it killed over 100 militants in Operation Sindoor. They acknowledged losing some fighter jets, though the exact number was disputed, and they reported those 15 civilian deaths from the Poonch shelling, plus 1 soldier killed.
And Pakistan's numbers.
Pakistan reported 31 civilian deaths from the initial Indian strikes on May 7th. They also reported further civilian casualties from later shelling. And as mentioned, they claimed downing numerous Indian drones.
It's just devastating, however you look at it. But thankfully, a ceasefire was brokered. How did that come about?
Yes, thankfully. A ceasefire was announced on May 10th, mediated primarily by the United States.
The U.S. stepped in directly.
Seems so. President Trump made the announcement, and it was then confirmed by the foreign secretaries of both India and Pakistan. It was set to take effect at 5:00 p.m. India Standard Time that day.
And the UN welcomed it.
Yes, the UN Secretary General issued a statement welcoming the cessation of hostilities. The direct U.S. involvement really underscores how seriously the international community viewed the potential for this to spiral completely out of control.
A huge sigh of relief globally, I imagine.
Right.
But was it stable? Did it hold immediately?
Well, that's the worrying part. Almost as soon as the ceasefire deadline passed, both sides started accusing each other of violations.
Oh, really? Along the Law Sea again?
Yes, reports of firing across the line of control. And there were also these concerning reports of explosions in Srinagar and Jammu within Indian-administered Kashmir soon after the ceasefire was meant to be in effect.
That doesn't sound good. It really highlights the fragility, doesn't it? The deep mistrust.
Absolutely. It underscores just how tense things remained on the ground despite the top-level agreement.
Yet, despite those reported violations, what was Pakistan's official stance on the ceasefire?
Interestingly, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif publicly hailed the ceasefire as a historical victory.
A victory.
That was the term used. He even declared May 11th today, as we record this, a Yawm Tashakkur, a day of gratitude holiday in Pakistan.
So perhaps some domestic political messaging there.
One could certainly interpret it that way, projecting strength and success to the home audience, even as this situation remained precarious.
So bringing us right up to May 11th,
Right.
what's the latest assessment? Is the ceasefire holding?
Based on reports this morning, like from the BBC, it seems the ceasefire mostly held overnight into Sunday, which is, a cautiously positive sign.
Cautiously optimistic. But tensions are still high.
Very high, according to all reports. And those punitive measures, the trade bans, the visa suspensions, the border closures, those are all still in place.
So the immediate de-escalation steps haven't been reversed yet.
Not yet. And the UN is continuing to urge maximum restraint from both sides. Pope Leo XIV also mentioned it in his Sunday address, welcoming the truce and calling for peace.
It really does seem the international community was heavily involved. Beyond the U.S., who else played a role?
Yes, it wasn't just the U.S., though they were key in the final mediation. Reports suggest countries like China and Saudi Arabia were also involved in de-escalation efforts behind the scenes.
Okay. And the U.K. praised the ceasefire.
Yes, the UK government welcomed it. The UN Secretary General called it positive and necessary. It's worth remembering Russia had actually issued a travel advisory for Pakistan back in April, maybe sensing the rising tension.
And what about looking forward? Are there talks planned?
Yes, that's perhaps the most crucial next step. Talks are reportedly scheduled for May 12th.
Tomorrow?
And the stated aim is to actually address the underlying issues, particularly the core Kashmir dispute.
Have there been attempts like this before? Mediation? Secret talks?
Oh, yes. There's a history of attempts. Iran offered to mediate previously. There were those reports a few years back about secret talks facilitated by the UAE. So, dialogue attempts aren't new, but making progress is the challenge.
And during the crisis itself, what about the information landscape? Was it hard to get clear facts? Misinformation?
Very much so. There were reports, for instance, from DW highlighting active misinformation campaigns during the hostilities, fake news spreading online.
Which just makes everything worse, presumably.
Absolutely. It inflames public opinion, makes rational de-escalation harder. We saw loads of activity on platforms like X, Twitter, reflecting the high emotions, the claims and counterclaims flying around just before the ceasefire. Discerning facts in that environment is really tough.
Okay, finally, let's look at the expert analysis. What are the strategic affairs commentators saying about all this? What are their main worries?
The overwhelming concern among experts is the sheer fragility of this ceasefire.
Fragility, that word keeps coming up.
It does, because the fundamental problems haven't gone away. The Kashmir dispute is unresolved. The deep, deep mistrust between India and Pakistan persists. Historical grievances are still potent.
And the nuclear dimension always looms large.
Always. Both are nuclear-armed states. And they have different stated doctrines. India with its no first-use policy, Pakistan maintaining more ambiguity, sometimes called strategic ambiguity, or hinting at first use under certain conditions. That difference itself creates instability.
Did experts feel this crisis was worse than recent ones, like 2019?
Many commentators felt the intensity and speed of escalation this time were particularly alarming. Some even brought up a chilling 2019 study that had modeled potential conflict scenarios.
What did that study suggest?
It predicted a heightened risk of a major India-Pakistan conflict, potentially even nuclear, around 2025, possibly triggered by a large-scale terrorist attack. The parallels were uncomfortable, to say the least.
Wow. That's sobering. So the think tanks, the International Crisis Group, Brookings, Stimson Center, what's their takeaway?
They're all highlighting the precariousness, the delicate balance of deterrence, the risks of miscalculation, the urgent need for sustained dialogue. The consensus really is that the ceasefire is essential, it's welcome, but it's just buying time. Meaningful diplomatic engagement has to happen, and quickly, to prevent the next crisis, which could be even worse.
So to sum up, we saw this incredibly dangerous escalation, halted, thankfully, by a ceasefire. But as you say, it feels incredibly fragile.
Extremely fragile.
The underlying issues, that long, tangled history, the Kashmir dispute, at the heart of it, there remain potent flashpoints. The world definitely watched nervously. And while international efforts helped avert immediate disaster, those instant accusations of ceasefire violations just hammer home how unstable things are.
Right, the trust deficit is enormous.
So talks are set for May 12th.
Right.
There's hope, of course, for real dialogue. But, I mean, given the history, given these immediate problems, what are the realistic chances for lasting peace? It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does.
And what role can the international community effectively play when the mistrust runs so deep between these two nuclear neighbors? It's a stark reminder, really, for all of us about the world we live in where nuclear powers can find themselves right on the brink, seemingly overnight. Something to really think about.